All right. So, hello, everyone. My name is Dwayne Hopkins, co-sponsored by TechNL and EnergyNL. I am the manager of the Digital Oil and Gas Initiative. Basically, the aim of this initiative is to spur collaboration and innovation to deliver digital solutions from our local tech industry to the oil and gas for this field of the future. I will be your host today for this webinar in AI and oil and gas, basically an industry perspective, where we got Aker Solutions here to present. This webinar will help build awareness, educate, and increase overall knowledge for the role of artificial intelligence and machine learning within the oil and gas industry. This is for both tech people on the call as well as the oil and gas people on the call to give them an oversight of artificial intelligence. Prior to introducing our speaker to this AI webinar, I would like to first acknowledge the land in which TechNL resides. We respectfully acknowledge the land in which we gather as the ancestral homelands of the Beothuk, whose culture has now been erased forever. We also acknowledge the island of Newfoundland as the unceded and traditional territory of the Beothuk and the Mi'kmaq. As we also acknowledge Labrador as the traditional and ancestral homelands of the Innu of the Netsin and the Inuit of the Netsivut and the Nutukavik, of which area of I call home. We acknowledge all First Peoples who have been here before us, those who live with us now, and the 7 generations to come. As First Peoples have done since time immemorial, we strive to be responsible stewards of the land and respect the cultures, ceremonies, and traditions of all who call it home. So for those residing outside of Newfoundland and Labrador, I open you to acknowledge where the land you reside in within the chat. So thank you for that. Some other housekeeping items, as is the normal webinar format, attendees' audio and video is disabled for the presentations. But that should not stop you from asking questions or asking for discussions points during the presentations. Just include them within the Q&A and chat function respectively. I will note them and ask them to our presenter on your behalf at the end of the presentation. As I stated at the beginning, this session is being recorded and will be available in a few days within the TechNL website. Now I hand it over to James. Here it's the EnergyNL Board Chair and our Digital Oil and Gas Advisory Board member to introduce the speaker.
Thanks, Dwayne. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our third and final AI webinar hosted collaboratively by TechNL and EnergyNL. Today, we're going to discuss AI in the offshore oil and gas industry from the perspective of a Tier 1. Aker Solutions has deep expertise across the oil and gas sector, which puts them in a unique position to evaluate new technologies and services directly relevant to the industry. I'm very pleased to welcome Scott Humber of Aker Solutions, who will discuss how Tier 1 EPC contractors are evaluating digitalization technologies, including AI and machine learning, for use in applications offshore Newfoundland and Labrador and beyond. Scott Humber is a graduate of Memorial's electrical engineering program. He has a diverse background with experience in automation, fiber optic communications, hardware design, startups, cloud applications, and programming. Most recently, Scott has been leading multiple internal and external digitalization initiatives at Aker. And I'll now hand it over to Scott and remind everyone, as Dwayne said, that we will have the opportunity for a Q&A at the end. So I look forward to your questions and comments. Over to you, Scott. You're on mute, Scott.
How's that? After all these years on remote calls, there's still issues with the technology and double muting. I really appreciate being invited to speak with you all today. The movement to modernize and digitalize the oil and gas industry is continually building, and there's almost an endless potential to modify, upgrade, and augment the way we work. The efforts of digitalization are very near and dear to my heart. I have a mix of industrial and technical experience, and I'm extremely passionate about the intersection of technology and humanity. I know that technology has endless potential to improve people's lives. Since graduating in 2005, I've worked in a number of diverse industries, starting out in pulp and paper, focused on control systems, automation, and power systems. And then moving on to communications, I was designing infrastructure that supports fiber optic and communications and mobility networks that connect Newfoundland and Labrador to Canada and to the rest of the world. From there, I went on to work for a tech company here locally, where I created design specifications and testing programs for cutting edge fiber optic communications hardware. After that, I worked for a couple of years for other tech startups here in Newfoundland until I started working for Aker Solutions 3 years ago as a senior electrical engineer. As I worked in the industry, I saw a lot of opportunity to modernize what Aker Solutions was doing as a service provider and have been leading our office in multiple digitalization engagements. I've currently been retasked as a digitalization specialist at Aker, and I'm now solely focused on exploring digitalization initiatives both internally and with our customers on a regional and global level. As James mentioned, today I'll be speaking a little bit about how Tier 1 engineering, procurement, construction, and management contractors are evaluating digitalization technologies like services based on AI and machine learning for use in applications in the offshore of Newfoundland and Labrador. First, a little bit about Aker Solutions. We were initially founded in 1841, which gives us 181 years of experience. We have 15,000 employees in 20 plus countries and over 50 locations in the world. In Canada, we've been operational for 30 plus years. There are 200 employees. Most of those are based here in St. John's, Newfoundland, and a small number of employees are out west servicing the industries in Alberta. We have a significant involvement in major oil and gas projects in the region. Exxon Hibernia, Exxon Sable, Cenovus Searose, Exxon Hebron, Exxon Sable decommissioning studies, SBM Deep Panook decommissioning and transport, and Cenovus West White Rose hookup and commissioning. In recent years, we've also completed a number of technical studies in the region related to blue hydrogen initiatives, carbon capture systems, natural gas, and electrification of offshore assets. We are also currently working on concept and pre-FEED studies for Equinor's Beta Nord project. Our staff in this region are subject matter experts in all areas of oil and gas projects and operations, and they provide world-class services, insights, and knowledge to the industry both locally and globally. In addition to that, we have two sister companies, Cognite and A's, that are focused on developing technologies for digitalization in the oil and gas industries. I'd like to take a second just to talk about digitalization noise in the industry. Digitalization, digital twins, artificial intelligence, machine learning. Everyone has different ideas, understandings, and expectations for all of these terms in the industry. There's a lot of confusion and misunderstanding around these technologies because the terms have reached buzzword status and have been blanketly applied to such a wide variety of products and services. Many of the products are also competing for space in the industry, so that there's a lot of overlap in functionality. And sales and marketing types may sometimes overzealously tout product features that may not yet be available. We also see many companies developing products without having direct access to the industry, which can lead to gaps or issues that cause friction towards adoption and further issues when deploying the technology in oil and gas scenarios, especially offshore. Early evaluation and collaboration by product developers and industry subject matter experts or operators can often remove that friction and facilitate deployment of these new technologies, ensuring fit in the industry. Aker Solutions has put a big push on digitalization with a focus on digital technologies such as industrial Internet of Things, machine learning and AI, and digital twins, which allow for a step change that fundamentally transforms the way we work and deliver our products and services. Aker Solutions is cutting through all the digital noise by providing digitalization services, studies, and recommendations that tackle specific pain points in the oil and gas industry. Utilizing our industry-leading engineering, procurement, construction, and management experience, Aker is focusing on digital tools that address key issues and deliver measurable results. Together with our customer alliances and partners, we are using our strong position with oil and gas, renewables, and carbon capture and storage to test, experiment, and learn. We explore how increased connectivity, sophisticated sensors, and advanced analytics can be combined with physical and 3D models to produce technology that revolutionizes the industrial experience. We challenge ourselves to think different, to work different, and to ultimately reimagine a more robust and sustainable future. As an EPCM, we have direct experience with all aspects of the industry and have a clear view across many operators and regions of the areas that can benefit most from digitalized solutions. As subject matter experts, we engage with companies developing digitalization products and work with operators to help study and map those tools into the industry in a way that maintains stability and reliability, both onshore and offshore. At a global level, Aker Solutions is engaged in a number of digitalization initiatives and studies in order to help operators understand what technology is available and how that technology can be adopted. We're constantly identifying new tools, determining use cases in the industry, and evaluating their level of readiness for deployment offshore. So why do we evaluate? The nature of oil and gas production necessitates stringent evaluation to ensure safety of personnel and the environment. Evaluating new tools and services through the lens of engineering and design in oil and gas ensures personnel safety, production levels, and reduced impact to the environment. Regulations and standards can dictate boundaries for adoption of certain tools and modifications to processes. New tools being introduced into oil and gas environments have to abide by the regulations. As an example, if a new piece of portable hardware, say a new type of measuring device, is to be used in the field, it needs to meet the requirements for use in classified hazardous areas. We have deployed iPads for our personnel offshore, which they can use to access historical and real-time data and engage in remote calls with vendors and experts and complete inspections from the field. These tablets have to be put in special cases and certified for use in hazardous environments. Otherwise, they would just have to be used in offices and control rooms, which severely limits their benefits. Oil and gas is also a very high investment, high return industry that relies on predictable production. New tools or modernization processes need to protect or enhance that reliability and ensure or increase levels of production. When studying production optimizations, historical data and models are used to simulate and predict the outcomes of changes to help prove that production levels can be safely increased. Stability and reliability are key to maintaining safety, the environment, and reliable production. If a new piece of software makes a mistake in classifying the severity or progression of corrosion, and this goes unchecked, then the deterioration of the equipment poses risk to production and could even pose risk to people's safety and the environment. So not only do we have to do the initial evaluation of a new tool or process, we have to ensure there are processes in place to continuously validate the product and ensure that it is running reliably and not introducing new problems into systems. At Aker Solutions, we evaluate digitalization tools and technologies at various levels. Some tools are simple and are deployed in office environments. The risks associated with such tools might be small and have narrow scope for deployment. Simple analysis of the tool and the workflow can be enough to make a decision to move forward. Other tools that we look at can be much more complex. They may involve the operator, personnel offshore, safety critical and environments and systems, changes to production parameters, and changes to how people work offshore. These scenarios are much more involved and require comprehensive study to understand the overall use case and benefits for adoption. Our first step is to identify a use case. As an EPCM contractor, our day-to-day business provides us with valuable insights into oil and gas processes and procedures that are excellent candidates for digitalization. There are even services that we provide as an EPCM that benefit from digitalization and modernization. And we're working towards continuously enhancing and modernizing those services. Alternatively, operators or service providers might share ideas or challenges they face that are prime candidates for digitalization. From there, we identify the scope and the stakeholders who are involved in the process of digitalization. We need to consider the boundaries of a new tool or service. We need to understand how it affects or augments existing tools and processes. We need to understand which people will need to be trained on the technology and how their workflows will be affected. Next, we'll reach out to vendors and service providers in the industry to determine who might have possible solutions. Perhaps there's a product that is fully developed, tested, and ready to go. Or perhaps possibly there's a product that is being developed but needs input from subject matter experts or testing in the field to be completed. There could likely be a number of possible solutions available, and all those solutions could be in various states of readiness. After gathering that information from vendors and service providers, we can study and begin to evaluate the products and services to determine which is a best fit to solve the problem. Through that process, we narrow down the most acceptable solution. There's a long list of evaluation criteria, but some of the things we look at are things like cost, stage of readiness, complexity of the tool, ease of training and use, reliability, and maintainability. Next, we define a realistic plan for implementing the solution. Depending on the size and the scope of the endeavor, we may set up a pilot program to ensure the solution will work as intended. This will also give an indication that the results and benefits are in line with what we've expected and predicted. From there, we evaluate the results and gather feedback on the solution through measurable metrics and feedback from stakeholders and users of the product. All of that information then gets fed back into the planning and evaluation stages of the process so that we can iterate and improve our plans and metrics. Feedback will also be given to the vendor or the developer of the tool or service so that they can update or improve their tools so they better fit and match the required functionality. After these tweaks are made, we may start to roll out the tool on a larger and larger audience until the full scope and all stakeholders using the new tool or processes completely. Through this process, we train personnel, gather more feedback, and methodically implement the digitalized solution. From there, we continue to measure the outcomes through metrics and feedback. And again, providers of the tool and services may also act on this feedback to improve their products so that they can release updates and new features as they progressively develop the software. There is data everywhere in the oil and gas industry. Over the last 30 years, we've become excellent at collecting data, but this has created its own challenges. There is so much data that it's impossible for a human to sit down and manually extract meaningful insights from it. On top of that, the data often exists in separate and often disconnected systems. Thankfully, operators are understanding this and they are taking leaps in liberating the data and making it accessible to digitalization applications. And I think this is where AI and machine learning can shine. Initial applications might flag interesting or anomalous data, which would significantly reduce the burden on operators, maintenance, and engineering resources. Future applications may be able to complete automated cataloging, tracking, and classifications of anomalies over time, and cross-correlate those observations with other data sets to provide more advanced insights. Every day, production, delivery, and maintenance is being reimagined and optimized by our engineers and designers. Analysis of historical, present, and simulated data sets helps us uncover, understand, and solve bottlenecks we didn't even know existed. In a recent customer project, condition monitoring and analytics allowed us to identify the root cause of a hydraulic pressure issue on a large subsea field west of Shetland. The real-time data stream supported an 80% reduction in required vessel and remotely operated vehicle time, which represents a potential savings of millions of dollars because the search area was narrowed down from 26 structures to 6. As another example, we are seeing products and services that create significant reductions in the time required for fabric maintenance inspections offshore. There's a company that completes imaging and inspection campaigns on an entire facility in a fraction of the time and for less than half the cost of what it takes today. We see a lot of potential for AI in tasks that require anomaly detection, such as inspections of subsea equipment, ship hulls, process tanks, piping, civil works, and rogue emissions. Actively monitoring the condition of equipment and accurately modeling to predict integrity issues or the possibility of failure, along with other applications of AI, has the potential to completely shift how maintenance and integrity functions are carried out offshore. It would put focus on the equipment that needs work immediately while deprioritizing maintenance on equipment that is modeled to be running without issue or degradation. This reduces the need for personnel to be outside of control rooms and safe areas, as it cuts down on needless maintenance activities. It increases productivity and time on tools, as the data sifting and analysis is being done rapidly by machines in the background instead of manually by people. It can also potentially move some maintenance and planning roles onshore. In addition, things like pressure, temperature, flow, limit, and vibration sensors provide a wealth of knowledge about how equipment is performing. Correlating these types of data can show if a valve is eroding over time or is unable to activate within its required parameters. It can also show if a motor or pump needs to be taken offline and serviced or replaced completely. And even more importantly, it can show you when you will need to do this service so you can reliably plan and reduce the impact on production. This sensor data, along with other process data that is collected, also provides the necessary information to carry out production optimizations, which further reduces impact on the environment. Further, as drones and robots become more prevalent in the offshore industry, inspections become cheaper and easier to conduct, and the amount of video and imaging data collected will grow significantly. We'll need advanced algorithms and AI to sift through this data and present us with the important information that needs to be actioned immediately. An engineer that I sit next to at work actually spends weeks and weeks sifting through hours and hours of subsea inspection footage and classifies anomalies that have been identified during inspections with UAVs. The time he spends could be significantly reduced if the right tool is created to analyze the audio and video that is created during the inspection. As we look at new tools and AI technology, there are some specific questions that need to be investigated and answered. What is the cost model? What are the CapEx and OpEx investments required? How is this offset by increased safety, reduced environmental impact, and production increases? This gets back to the case studies I mentioned earlier and are important things to keep in mind if you are developing or adopting tools for the offshore industry. What is the development roadmap? Is the product ready today? Does it need to be modified before being deployed on a specific asset? What happens when there is a bug found in the software or a software update needs to be made? What is the evolution of this product this year, next year, in 5 years, or even 10 years? What are the training sets for the AI? Who owns the training sets and the aggregated models? Will an operator allow you to train models on their data sets and then allow you to deploy to other customers? What is the reliability and accuracy of the technology? Has it been deployed on other assets to prove it has worked? Real-world data and validation brings a lot of credibility to any digitalization product. Is the AI tool simple to use? What type of training is required? Can one trained employee train another employee? Can training be completed onshore, offshore, or remotely? The commitment required to learn the tool needs to be well understood so that realistic timelines for deployment can be created. What is the data security and the privacy model of a new tool? As modern tools are being deployed to the cloud, they need to undergo evaluation to ensure they are not introducing security risks to data and intellectual property, which can compromise production and safety offshore. And lastly, what connectivity does this tool provide? Are there APIs available within the tool that allow connection into other digitalization systems? Can insights and other derived information be shared with other digitalization products? The connectivity of these tools is paramount, and the sharing of the data is very important for continuously improving and gaining further insights into operations. These questions are by no means comprehensive, but do provide you with some further insights as to what requires further consideration. Lastly, I'd like to touch on some of the key challenges that we face in our region as we develop and explore AI and other tools for digitalization. The first step is that someone needs to develop the technology that addresses a particular pain point in the industry. If that is happening in this region, there's a good chance it is happening elsewhere in the world. Like I said, there's a lot of development and competition in this space. It's important that companies work on their differentiators. A number of vendors might have a method for automatically detecting and classifying anomalies, but if you have even comparable accuracy, functionality, and speed, but you are the most user-friendly and easy to understand tool on the market, then your product can easily beat out global competitors or even possibly become a target for partnership or acquisition. The rate of adoption of new tools and processes. There's only so much bandwidth to adopt new tools and change the way we work in the industry. Evaluations of technology take time, but change takes even more time. And once the tool is adopted, the process of rolling out new features and updates is continuous. Comprehensive planning and roadmaps are key to managing change and adoption of digitalization technologies. The next is personnel. I've heard people say this, and it's becoming quite clear after working in this space. The development of the technology is the easy part of digitalization. Deployment and adoption is the challenging part. In order to spur adoption, there are a lot of mindsets that need to be upgraded. It's sometimes referred to as going digital versus being digital. Going digital would be bringing in the tools to upgrade your processes. Being digital is having the mindset to accept that the current processes, even though they work, have the potential to be enhanced and improved, and that should be enough to want to modernize it. The next challenge is tech resources in the region. It's no secret that Newfoundland and Labrador has a hard time holding on to new graduates, especially ones in the tech industry. It's even harder to attract that kind of talent in the oil and gas industry, but it's not impossible. We've recently hired a couple of tech resources in our office here to help with our digitalization plans and initiatives. And the last piece is cooperation. In order to develop technologies in our region that can then be adopted by industry, we're all going to have to work together. So there are many pieces that need to come together to develop technology, test technology, and ensure the technology is ready for adoption in the industry. The good news is that our region has all the necessary pieces to put together successful and effective digitalization tools. We have companies and organizations that are developing interesting tools and technologies that will modernize our industry, and they will need support in order to be successful. Service providers, operators, EPCMs all need to work together on identifying applications and use cases for technology, sharing their challenges that need solutions in our region, and making space for vendors to test and validate their technologies, and helping develop the roadmaps that outline digitalization here for the next decade. Government and organizations such as Energy NL, TechNL, Energy Research and Innovation NL, and the Ocean Supercluster need to continue fostering the companies that are developing the products to address the challenges of the industry. And finally, educators such as Memorial University, the Marine Institute, and College of the North Atlantic need to prepare the coming workforce to have a digitalization mindset And companies like Get Coding here locally, whose programming I've actually completed myself, are an excellent source for upskilling and training industry workers so that they can interact and help connect and deploy digitalization technologies. Together, we can ensure the industry is competitive on a global scale and thrives here for years to come. That's it for my presentation. Again, I'd like to thank TechNL for inviting me to talk. I'm happy to answer any questions that you folks might have. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Scott. That was a wonderful presentation. It's very informative. I see a lot of those challenges that you spoke of, but probably couldn't articulate it the same way as you can. There are some questions that come through, so I will just start the ball rolling of some of the ones that were in the chat function here. Is Aker creating any AI-enabled proprietary tools to improve their services to clients? You make reference to subsea imaging review workstream.
I can't go into too much detail, but we are certainly investigating and exploring tools in those areas. As I mentioned, there's a lot of manual effort that goes into these types of assessments, and tools in that area certainly offer a lot of benefits for reducing the manual effort, for also removing the human element in classification of those types of anomalies. So a computer could be much better at applying standard classifications to an anomaly versus a human. So we see a lot of benefits in that area, and we are certainly exploring that functionality.
Another one that came from the crowd. What are some of the challenges you have encountered with respect to change management for new AI tools implemented for your clients?
This kind of gets back to the use cases and planning that we set up for our case studies and studies in general. Basically, whenever we go to introduce a new tool, there are a number of aspects that could be affected personnel-wise or process-wise or procedure-wise. And it's very important to really consider all these facets and plan the change of these processes accordingly. It's very difficult to introduce a tool offshore or even in the office if people don't receive the required training or understand the benefits of these new tools. And adopting the change management process certainly helps to facilitate and reduce that friction in introducing new tools and new technologies.
Thank you. I've got a question here as well that I'm most curious about. You talked about in your evaluation process, and you going through all these processes. Has there been a history of where, even before digitalization, or maybe even including digital tools, solutions developed within Newfoundland? Have you brought them through, as Aker brought them through that evaluation process?
Yes, actually. Sorry, just making a couple of notes there. I guess specifically in digitalization, there are a couple of things that stand out even since I've been working at Aker Solutions over the last 3 years. Some of them not necessarily brought forward by us, but some are brought forward by operators who have, like I said, a problem or an interest in a certain piece of technology. There are particular software packages by Radiant 360. They've developed excellent software that meets needs and solves problems in the industry. And we have operators that have adopted those packages. We've been part of the evaluation process, we've been part of the input process. Like I said, we help define or tweak how those products function and how they're adopted offshore. In the case of those particular software products, a lot of them are used in-house in our office. So there's a lot of training not a lot of training. Actually, the products are particularly easy to use, but resources had to be trained up on how to use the products, and so we can deploy them in our workflows.
Thank you. Yeah, so in that particular case, there's operator led initiatives to look at local. What does Aker themselves do to look out for local tech?
So I guess I can't say too much about it, but we are looking at a local company in particular, and we're in the process of onboarding their tool, adopting and onboarding their tool. We're running through the process that I outlined, and basically we're gearing up to run a pilot program. But we see their tool as adding significant value to the work we do in the office, and we're eager to get that underway to show off what the tool is capable of and the benefits and wins that we see from adopting that tool.
Excellent. I think that's a good eye opener of different use cases for the tech industry on how to get their technology out there and being used. Thank you for that.
Sure. Just one more piece to add to that, I guess, just something else that popped in my mind. We're also partnered with a local drone company who has access to a lot of different hardware and tools. And we're exploring different ways to bring those tools kind of into the offshore industry, provide better services for services that we already provide, but also to look at what other digitalization technologies we can layer on to those robots and drones, for instance. So as I mentioned, they would be collecting a lot of data, and just to sit down and sift through that data is impossible. So we also have to evaluate technologies locally and globally, I guess, that can sift through that data that's being collected.
That's perfect. Let me see. I think there's another question that came up here. As you indicated, it's taking time for industry to change and adapt this tech. Are you seeing an uptake in interest in adopting technology in industry? Basically, how long do you think it will take industry to truly be digital?
I guess I started working on digitalization projects kind of internally at Aker early after I started there. And we were kind of picking away at a few different things, mostly local internal processes, things that had wrinkles that could be ironed out with a little bit of technology, maybe an application here, upgrade a spreadsheet there, that kind of thing. And I guess one of the big drivers that we saw come through is COVID, obviously. Our entire workforce, like most workforces, had to work from home. And with that came a need to adopt more digital technologies. And around about the same time, Aker Solutions was restructuring its business to put digitalization kind of on the forefront of their priorities. And I guess over COVID and since COVID, there's been a very big push to adopt these technologies on Aker Solutions level, but also there's been a very noticeable increase in uptake and interest from operators in the region and service providers in the region to adopt these tools. And so we're working very hardly and diligently to help folks understand the issues that they might be having and kind of flesh out these roadmaps and case studies for how we can apply these digitalization technologies to the industry. All that being said, the biggest barrier or the most time consuming part, it seems to be, is changing mindsets and upskilling folks in the industry. And I've seen that people are very eager to learn and adopt these tools, both in our office and with our operators. But it does take time to understand, first of all, to learn how to use a new tool and the technology, but then to also understand how the tool affects your day-to-day work and changes your workflow offshore. So the answer to that question is, it's going to take a little while, and it's very hard to determine how long it's going to take, but mostly because you need to take your time to ensure safety and reliability, you need to take your time to train your resources and make sure that they're comfortable out in the field using this technology. But the other piece is that once you start to adopt these technologies, it's a continuous process of improvement. So I don't think I know of any company that releases a product and then that's it. They don't do anything else. They're always continuously improving their products and expanding their scopes. And I think for that reason, the digitalization process is going to be continuous in the industry. There's always going to be something new and there's always going to be something improved. And we should always be reviewing that and understanding how that can improve our industry.
Thank you. Well said. Well said. I'm looking through here now, and I'm not seeing any more questions come through. I'll let you for maybe a concluding statement before I hand it over to James to maybe give a concluding remarks.
Sure. Again, I'd just like to say thanks for this opportunity. And I mean, anybody, feel free to reach out for further discussions in this area. I'm very open to chatting with folks in the industry, to companies who are developing technology. And like I said, we're on the lookout for new technology and new solutions. So please feel free to reach me. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can contact me through TechNL. Somebody knows how to get a hold of me for sure.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Yes, it's been a great pleasure having you and speaking with you. It always is very inspiring. I'll hand it over to James now for any concluding remarks.
Thanks, Dwayne. So thank you, Scott, for this engaging and informative session. I believe knowledge transfer is a key benefit that we've seen in the energy sector. Large-scale digitalization efforts for operators and tier ones is a great example of how this can play out. We don't always see this in our province, but when you get large players committed to the industry, there's an opportunity here for us to participate. And I certainly hope that our local tech and energy companies are able to continue to engage with you on your journey. In particular, Aker. I know I've worked a lot with Dave Billard in the past. Aker's been great in terms of their digitalization, sharing of information, sharing of their initiatives. And I think that the past work that TechNL and Energy NL have done on the digitalization front, there's been a lot of contributions from Aker, so I'd like to say thank you for that. I'd also like to thank everyone online for your participation in our session today, as well as the previous sessions. We've had some pretty important dialogue about the current and future applications of AI in the offshore, and I hope it piqued your interest and that we keep these conversations going. Further thank you to TechNL and the Energy NL staff for hosting these webinars and organizing. Our collaborations have always been very impactful and very well received, and I look forward to growing the relationship between our organizations to help support members across both sectors. So that's it for me, Dwayne. I don't know if you want to sort of shut her down or if I'm supposed to press the end button.
No, thanks very much. Great words, and these collaborations, working with the industry on both sides, with the tech industry and with Energy NL members, will only drive us towards a digital future. Thank you for everybody attending. Thanks again to Scott, James, Beverly. Thank you for all for joining in. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.